right, welcome into the show. And before we get Jonah on, I wanted to kind of discuss a little bit. There was some college football news slash. We're more going through the Big Ten, so I want to go through one game, but there was some news that I wanted to get into before the show starts, and that is the Mel Tucker news. And this Mel Tucker news isn't good news. It isn't at all. I have never really been a Mel Tucker guy. I mean, to be real with everybody here on the podcast, if you don't really know my stance on Michigan State, all that jazz, because I am from Michigan. So, we're talking like you're either a Michigan fan or a Michigan State fan. That's just kind of how it works when you're in Michigan. You talk about it all the time, at least in grade school. That's what it was. That's how we were categorized and stuff like that. And I'm going to be real with you. Ever since I was young, I've always just been a Michigan football fan. It is the truth. And going through the rivalry and stuff, I mean, I always thought it was kind of cool. Like, everybody was like, oh, Michigan State's a basketball school, Michigan's a football school. It's kind of how it worked. And then throughout my childhood, it's been kind of flip-flopped for a while, because Michigan stunk at football for as long as I could remember, until Harbaugh got there and actually made them what they were. And Mark D'Antonio did a really good job with their football program, and Michigan State was actually the football school, beating us ever since Michigan State and Michigan were both good for that little one stretch. It was actually kind of cool. And, those games were always so great to watch and all that. And ever since the punt, yeah, I don't like talking about that punt, because that was a really rough moment. And a lot of Michigan State fans really rubbed that in as best as they could. And I've never been a Michigan State football fan since. It's just the truth. I don't like Michigan State football. I don't think I ever will. I'm very much a fan of their basketball. I love Tom Izzo. I think he's a fantastic coach. And I root for Michigan State when I can. But I'm not a Michigan State football guy, and I never will be. That's just the truth. So let's actually get into the Mel Tucker situation, because it's not good at all. So what's going on here is, per sources, this is just a Woodward Sports Network thing. Michigan State has fired Mel Tucker. There's two different reports going out, so we're not exactly sure what's official, because I've seen Mel Tucker's been suspended indefinitely and he's been fired. So what I kind of come across with this news is that he's suspended, because the Pete Thamel news, which Pete Thamel is really the writer to look at when you're looking at college football writers, because he's the one that gets the news right. He's kind of like the Woj of the college football world. So Pete Thamel, that news was that he was suspended indefinitely. So I'm thinking he's actually suspended indefinitely and not fired yet completely. But we'll see with the news. Like, news with that can change real quick. I mean, I'm recording this Sunday night, so we could know by the end of the night for sure, oh, he's gone, or for sure he's suspended indefinitely. And with this, there was news that broke last night while I was watching some college football games that Mel Tucker is the prime suspect for a sexual harassment scandal. And you never want to talk about this. I've talked about this once before on the Jake and Gus podcast, when we were talking about the Deshaun Watson stuff. That stuff's never great. And I don't like talking about this, but I feel like it just should be talked about. It's just horrible. It's just flat out horrible, I mean, I start this as a sports show, and I love talking about sports, but stuff like this happens in sports. It's just the truth. We see a lot of either sexual harassment or drugs or things of that nature, where there's illegal stuff happening and it just can't be tolerated. And a lot of these sports programs, they sometimes don't do the right thing. I think in this case, if you fire Tucker, great. If you suspend him, okay, it is what it is. But Michigan State's got to do something, and we'll see exactly what they do. Again, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to end up doing with this, because it's really interesting. But with this news coming out, something has to be done, and I doubt we see him on the sideline this season, because it's absolutely rough. And I mean, if you're a Michigan State football fan, you guys started at 2-0, so it's like, yeah, maybe you could have had a season, but again, you're playing Washington next week. It's going to be a rough game. Washington's really good. I'm actually going to that game. I'm excited for that. But I mean, this is just really tough. It really is tough. Mel Tucker, you guys gave him $100 million, and he got you to the college. He got you close to the college football playoff with Kenneth Walker. I mean, Kenneth Walker was unbelievable. Um, like you guys beat Michigan. You had that year where you're sensational. You gave him a ton of money, and then he didn't do anything. Like nothing happened since. He hasn't done anything for your program. So if I'm looking at it, Mel Tucker, I've never been a fan. I just haven't. I thought you guys paid him way too soon. Michigan State fans, that is, and Michigan State as a group paid him way too soon. And it hasn't been good for them. It really hasn't. They haven't been able to put together some winning seasons, and I really think this is going to be tough for Michigan State. It's a tough look to have your head coach like this. I think this is a perfect way to move on and start fresh with your football program. I really do. Get a better guy in there, somebody that can handle himself. Mark D'Antonio did a fantastic job with your football program. He will be missed. I think he was an unbelievable coach, and you got to get someone like that had control over everything in the football program. I think Tucker, yeah, he brought in a great transfer in Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth, it shows you that Michigan State team was more Kenneth Walker than anything else. It wasn't Mel Tucker's coaching. It wasn't anything like that. That was Kenneth Walker being the NFL running back that he's proven himself to be. So I'm looking at it, Michigan State. This is rough. I mean, I do think they should fire Mel Tucker. I think it's time to move on, and I think it'd be very good for the Michigan State program and just for everybody involved with Michigan State. All right, let's get into some fun stuff. Let's talk about some football. I'm going to be bringing Jonah in. We're going to be talking about Big Ten football, really the majority of the time. So I just wanted to talk about Texas, Alabama before we get started. And this game was unbelievable. I was so excited to watch this game. Throughout the whole weekend, I was like, this game is going to be so much fun. Texas, Alabama, man, this is going to be a blast. These two teams are so talented. And really, it was put on display. Unbelievable game. Texas ended up winning this game in tremendous fashion, really. Going into this game, a lot of people were like, this was a close game last year, but I just don't know what to expect from Texas going to Tuscaloosa. This is just going to be so difficult. But Texas showed us that they are for real. Their offensive line and defensive line in this game were flat out dominant. They got some athletes on that line, and they're tremendous. And Quinn Ewers, I just got to talk about him for a second. He's just an unbelievable quarterback. In this game, he ended up 24 for 38, 349 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Unbelievable stat line. I think he really proved to the world that he's one of the top tier college football quarterbacks right now. He is just flat out sensational. I mean, unbelievable. Some of the deep balls he was throwing were incredible. And a lot of people were ripping his deep ball. He was one of the worst quarterbacks last year in throwing the deep ball. And he's really shown so much improvement in so many ways. When Arch Manning got on campus this year, Peyton Manning's son, he got on campus, people were like, oh, maybe we could see some Arch Manning this year. Yeah, no. Quinn Ewers is unbelievable at the quarterback position. I've always been a big Quinn Ewers guy, and I love what he's doing here. And Texas, people had some questions. Oh, Bijan Robinson's leaving. How are they gonna adjust? That production's gone. He's gonna be like a top tier player in the NFL. How are they gonna adjust? Well, Jonathan Brooks and CJ Baxter have really done a great job carrying that running back crew. They were pretty good in this game. Brooks with 14 carries, 57 yards, a touchdown. Baxter with 11 carries, 31 yards. That's solid, especially against a very physical Alabama defense. Alabama's defense is a very good defense, and they looked really good throughout this game. Their corners made a couple of plays where I was just like, oh my gosh, the athleticism on these guys are unbelievable. With Alabama, it's just going to be really interesting because this is the first time they haven't had a top-tier quarterback in a long time. They had Jalen Hurts, they had Tua, they had Bryce Young, and they also had they've just had some sensational talent throughout. And they don't have the receivers that they normally had too. Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith. They've just had some of the guys that have been flat out sensational. They had Najee Harris a couple of years ago. That was just crazy. So Jalen Milroe is just not that. He just isn't. And there was a quarterback battle before the year. I talked about it on the preview where it was Milroe or Tyler Buckner. And I was shocked it wasn't Buckner because Alabama brought in the Notre Dame offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees. And I was like, oh, Tyler Buckner's following Tommy Rees. He's probably just going to go with this guy Buckner. No, they trusted Milroe. And that's because Milroe has so much athleticism, and he's a very good quarterback. But people were comparing him to Jalen Hurts. He's not Jalen Hurts. He can't throw as well. And you see it with some of the mistakes he made. Like, there was a couple times where he just didn't see the coverage. And you can't have that when you're a quarterback. It's very difficult to be a top-tier quarterback when sometimes you can just have these brain farts. It really is. I mean, and like not see the coverage. It's tough. And Milroe's so athletic where he can make these crazy plays. He had 44 yards rushing, which in college, that's actually kind of difficult to do as a quarterback because when you get sacked, you have negative yards tacked onto your rush yards. So 44 yards is actually a pretty solid running game. And he's so athletic. Like, he can create plays. But a lot of these college guys struggle because they hold the ball for a long time trying to make a play. He was one of those guys really holding the ball for a while, trying to make these plays. And, it just wasn't happening. I thought his receivers were actually solid in this game. Burden had a solid game on the receiving end. He ended up with 2 receptions, 58 yards. Kobe Prentice, I think. I don't know if I'm saying that right. He had 5 receptions, 68 yards. He actually had a solid game too. I think Bama has a lot of really solid guys that can do some things. Their running back was pretty good. Chase McClellan, he had 12 carries, 45 yards. I thought he was impressive. Alabama is a solid team, and they're going to be very solid in the SEC, but I think Texas is for real. And looking at it, my 2 other college football playoff teams were Clemson and LSU, which is looking absolutely horrible. So I think I would actually put Texas now as one of my spots. Now, saying that, they're probably going to lose next week because that's just been my luck so far with picking teams. But looking at it, I think this Texas team is really good. They won this game 34-24. I think they have a top-tier quarterback in Quinn Ewers, and the Big 12 isn't great. It's not great. I really like Texas Tech out of this conference. They haven't looked great. They were close to Oregon, which we're not going to get to in this podcast, but they actually look solid in that Oregon game. But they're starting out 0-2, so they're not great. TCU is not the same. They lost to Colorado. They did win this week. They didn't play really anyone. It wasn't a great game. I think they won 41-7. And then looking at some of the other teams, Oklahoma's solid. They had a good win against SMU this week, won 28-11. Dylan Gabriel didn't look great. So I think Oklahoma could give them a little bit of a game. Oklahoma State's not really a team that could give you a great game. Kansas State's the only other team that could probably keep it close. Will Howard looked really good this week in their win against Rice. I think he's a very good quarterback, and Kansas State has a lot coming back there. So looking at Texas, they got it pretty good coming up, and I'm going to look at their schedule coming up. Wyoming, don't sleep on this Wyoming team. This Wyoming team's good. They beat Texas Tech in double overtime the first game, and then kind of handily won their second game as well. So I think they could actually play them okay. And then they go at Baylor. Baylor lost to Utah this week. They're a solid team if they can figure out their quarterback situation, and it's always tough to play at Baylor. That's an in-state rivalry, so that should be interesting. Kansas the next week, and Kansas is a solid team. That's going to be interesting. Then they got the Red River rivalry with Oklahoma. They have that at home, which is going to be nice for them, and Oklahoma's always going to keep that a close game. And then BYU at home, another good one. You get Kansas State at home, and really, to me, other than at TCU, that's about it on the schedule. I think they win every other game. So if you take care of business, if you're Texas, and then you're able to win that Big 12, like, there's no way if this team goes undefeated with a win against Alabama that they're not making the playoff. This team's sensational, and I think everybody should start taking Texas for real. All right, I'm going to bring in Jonah, and we're going to be discussing some Big Ten games from Week 2.